I stood in the spacious living room of my wife's family home in Palo Alto, about 30 minutes drive from San Francisco, gripping the handle of my suitcase tightly. The scent of my mother-in-law, Eleanor Bennett's expensive perfume, still lingered in the air, but the entire family had just left, dragging their noisy suitcases to catch a flight to Honolulu, Hawaii. They left me, Zane Carver, 30 years old, with the responsibility of caring for Noah Bennett, my wife's brother, whom I always thought was paralyzed and mute due to a childhood car accident. Just before stepping out the door, my wife, Sophie Bennett, turned back, her eyes cold as ice. "Taking care of Noah is your job, Zane," she said, her voice sharp. "Don't slack off. Got it?" Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The front door slammed shut, leaving the house in suffocating silence. I sighed, dragging my suitcase toward Noah's room, intending to unpack for a week-long stay. Noah sat in his wheelchair, his eyes gleaming as he looked at me, a mischievous smile on his lips, unlike his usual calm demeanor. I smiled, signing with my hands. The language I'd learned to communicate with him. "They're gone. Just the two of us now." Noah nodded, but his smile grew sly, as if hiding a big prank. Then, like a scene from an unbelievable movie, Noah placed his hands on the wheelchair's rims and pushed himself to stand. I froze, eyes wide, mouth agape. He took a step toward me and spoke, his voice clear. "All right, Zane, let's get going too." I stood stunned, my mind spinning as if thrown into a bizarre nightmare. "Noah, you can walk? You can talk?" I stammered, my trembling hand pointing at him, my voice nearly a shout. "What the hell is this?" Noah laughed, a carefree laugh, then sat on the nearby sofa, gesturing for me to come closer. "Calm down, Zane. Sit. I'll explain," he said, his tone relaxed, but his eyes sparkling with excitement. I stumbled to the couch, still unable to believe what I'd just seen. Noah, whom I always thought couldn't walk or talk, was now sitting in front of me, grinning slyly like a kid who'd pulled off a successful prank. "Listen," Noah began. "I've been partially recovered since last year thanks to secret physical therapy, but I hid it from the whole family, including Sophie and her mom." I blinked, trying to process the information. "But why?" I asked, my voice still shaky. Noah shrugged, his smile fading. "Eleanor, my stepmother, has hated me since I was a kid. I'm my dad's kid from his previous marriage. She's always seen me as a burden, so I pretended to still be paralyzed to avoid dealing with her." I stared at Noah, still in shock. "But, Hawaii? What's your plan?" Noah winked, his mischievous smile returning. "My dad, Harold, knows everything. He bought plane tickets and booked us a place at Waikiki Beach Resort, the same place Sophie's family is staying. I want them to see I'm not a burden anymore. And I think you need to see who Sophie really is." Noah's words hit like a punch. I'd suspected Sophie for a while, her weekend business trips, her refusal to talk, but I always convinced myself she still loved me. "What do you mean about Sophie?" I asked, my voice trembling. Noah tilted his head, his eyes serious. "Just come with me, Zane. You'll understand." I hesitated, thinking about how furious Sophie would be if she knew I left Palo Alto. Noah, whom I always thought couldn't walk or talk, had just stood up, spoken, and invited me to Honolulu to confront my wife's family. I dragged my suitcase to a corner of the room, sat down, and tried to calm myself. But as I looked around Noah's tidy room, with family photos on the shelf that barely included him, I couldn't stop thinking about my own life, about what had led me to this moment. I, Zane Carver, 30 years old, once dreamed of becoming a rock star. In my teens, I clutched my electric guitar, performing in small San Francisco bars where the smoke and stage lights made me feel alive. I imagined myself on a big stage, with thousands singing along. But that dream crumbled when my mom kept repeating, "Zane, you need a real job." So I gave up the guitar, studied engineering, and became a software engineer at a Silicon Valley tech company. The job was stable, but every day staring at a computer screen felt like a part of me was dying. I met Sophie Bennett through a mutual friend. She worked in Silicon Valley, a PR specialist with a radiant smile and explosive energy. When we first met, Sophie would sit for hours, listening to me play guitar, singing along to old rock songs. I fell hard for her, and after just a year, we got married. Partly because my mom kept asking, "When will I see grandkids?" But marriage wasn't what I expected. After 2 years, Sophie changed. She started taking frequent business trips, coming home late smelling of wine, and whenever I asked, she brushed me off. I tried to convince myself she was just busy, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Sophie's family made things worse. They lived in Palo Alto, in a modern house with a lush green yard, 30 minutes from our place. Every visit felt like walking into a courtroom. Eleanor Bennett, Sophie's mother, was the judge wielding the gavel. She called Sophie soft, and always found ways to criticize me. "Soft shoes are dirty, Zane," she once said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "If a woman's shoes are dirty, it says how bad her husband is. You need to take better care of her." I just nodded, trying to stay calm, but inside I wanted to scream that Sophie never let me touch her shoe. Eleanor didn't stop there. "What kind of folding is this?" She once scoffed when she saw me helping Sophie organize clothes. "If Soph's clothes aren't neat, she'll be cranky all day. You have to do it right." I forced a smile, but each of her words was like a knife. She even said outdated things like, "No matter how late Soph comes home, you don't go to bed before her, Zane. Even if she says it's fine, you wait." I looked at Sophie hoping she'd speak up, but she just looked down, pretending not to hear. Meanwhile, Harold Bennett, Sophie's father, was rarely around. A businessman always busy with meetings. When he did show up, he'd nod at me and disappear into his study. The only person in the family who made me feel at ease was Noah. Though he couldn't speak, Noah used sign language with a wit that made me laugh. I learned to sign to talk with him, and over visits to Palo Alto, we grew close. Once I signed to Noah. "We're like best friends from a past life, right?" Noah laughed, signing back. "Exactly. We'll always be best friends." I never imagined that friendship would lead me to this moment, but now, looking back, I saw the red flags. Sophie grew distant, refusing to talk, and on her weekend business trips, she wouldn't let me come along. I once confronted her. "Sophie, you're hiding something from me, aren't you?" She just looked at me, her eyes flashing with irritation, and said, "You're too sensitive, Zane. Don't make a big deal out of it." I tried to believe her, but each of her words was like a small cut, building into a larger pain. I looked at Noah, still sitting on the sofa, his mischievous smile unwavering. "Are you serious, Noah?" I asked, my voice still shaky. "Go to Hawaii, confront Sophie and Eleanor? What's going to happen?" Noah shrugged, winking. "Just trust me, Zane." I stood up, pulling my suitcase closer, my heart pounding. Images of Sophie and Eleanor criticizing me, their cold stares flashed in my mind. Maybe Noah was right. Maybe this was my chance to see the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Noah laughed, his laughter echoing through the quiet Palo Alto house. He took a few steps, as if showing off his ability to walk, then sat in the chair across from me. "Crazy but worth it, Zane," he said, winking. "Let me tell you the details." I nodded, trying to focus, though my mind was still a mess. Noah began, his voice calm but resolute. "Like I said, I've been partially recovered since last year, thanks to secret physical therapy, but I hid it from the whole family. Sophie, Eleanor, everyone. Eleanor, my stepmother, has hated me since I was a kid. I'm my dad's kid from his previous marriage. She sees me as a stain, a burden that tarnishes her perfect family." I blinked, trying to picture what Noah was describing. Eleanor's image came to mind, with her cold stare and disdainful smirk. Every time we visited the Palo Alto house, she almost never entered Noah's room. If she did, she'd glance at him and turn away, as if he were an unwanted object. "So you pretended to be paralyzed for what?" I asked, still not fully understanding. Noah shrugged, his smile turning bitter. Pretending kept her at bay. If I admitted I was recovering, she'd try to control me, or worse, kick me out of the house. My dad, Harold, knows everything, but he told me to keep it a secret until I was ready. "Harold knows?" I was shocked, thinking of the quiet man who always disappeared into his study. Noah nodded, his eyes lighting up. "Dad's the only one on my side. He arranged everything for this trip. Plane tickets, rooms at Waikiki Beach Resort, where Sophie's family is staying. He wants me to live fully. And I think you need that too, Zane." Noah's words cut like a knife. I thought of Sophie, her weekend business trips, her late nights smelling of wine, and her familiar line, "You're too sensitive, Zane." I'd tried to ignore my bad feelings, but Noah's words made it impossible to keep pretending. "What do you mean about Sophie?" I asked, my voice trembling, both wanting and fearing the truth. Noah tilted his head, his eyes serious. "Just come with me, Zane. You'll see. I don't want to say too much, but you suspect her too, don't you?" I looked down, gripping the edge of the chair. The times Eleanor criticized me, from Sophie's dirty shoes to how I folded clothes, played in my mind. Sophie never defended me, just stood silently, sometimes even agreeing with her mom. But if Sophie finds out I left, she'll lose it, I said, my voice weak. Noah laughed, patting my shoulder. Let her lose it. Do you think Sophie or Eleanor actually care about you? They treat you like a servant, Zane. You deserve better. Noah's words hit the pain I'd always tried to bury. I thought of the nights alone in San Francisco, waiting for Sophie to come home, only to get a cold glance. But, how do we get to Hawaii? I asked, still hesitant. Noah stood, walking around the room, showing off his mobility. Easy. My dad took care of everything. Plane tickets, hotel rooms, even your expenses. We'll take a different flight, straight to Waikiki. I've got my passport. You? I nodded, remembering my passport in my suitcase. I do, but this is too crazy, Noah. Noah winked, his mischievous smile back. Crazy but worth it. Do you want to live forever pleasing Sophie and Eleanor? Come with me, Zane. I looked at Noah, his determined eyes giving me strength. I thought of Eleanor's criticisms, Sophie's cold words. Maybe Noah was right. I dragged my suitcase through San Francisco International Airport, the wheels clattering steadily, blending with Noah's lively chatter behind me. Hurry up, Zane, he called, his voice full of excitement. Hawaii's waiting. Just hours ago, in the Palo Alto house, Noah had shocked me by standing from his wheelchair, revealing he'd been recovering for a while, and inviting me to Honolulu to confront my wife's family. I was still reeling, but Noah's sly smile and determination convinced me. Now, we were about to board a flight, not the one Sophie's family took, but a different one, taking us straight to Waikiki Beach Resort. At the check-in counter, I checked my passport for the third time, still nervous. You're too stressed, Noah teased, winking. Relax, my dad's got everything covered. I shook my head, forcing a smile. Easy for you to say. If Sophie finds out I left, she'll tear me apart. Noah laughed, patting my shoulder. Let her try. You've got me. As we entered the gate area, a familiar figure appeared. Harold Bennett, Sophie's father, stood there, his suit impeccable, but his eyes warmer than usual. Zane, Noah, he called, his voice low. It's been a while. I froze, not expecting him here. Noah stepped forward, hugging his dad, then turned to me. Dad took care of the tickets and hotel, like I said. Harold nodded, placing a hand on my shoulder. Thank you for going with Noah, Zane. I know this is sudden, but enjoy the trip. I nodded, awkward. Thank you, sir. But why are you helping us like this? Harold smiled, his eyes tinged with sadness. Noah deserves to live, and you need to see things clearly. He said no more, just patted my shoulder, and left, leaving me with a million questions. On the plane, I looked out the window, watching San Francisco's lights fade. Noah sat beside me, flipping through a travel magazine, pointing at a picture of Waikiki Beach. Look at this, Zane. Paradise, he said, his voice excited. I smiled, but my mind drifted to the early days with Sophie. When we first met, she dragged me to walk on Santa Cruz Beach, holding my hand, smiling brightly. Zane, someday we'll go to Hawaii, she said, her eyes sparkling. I'd believed we'd always be like that. When the plane landed in Honolulu, the warm air and scent of tropical flowers hit us. I pulled my suitcase through the airport, Noah walking beside me, striding confidently, as if he'd never used a wheelchair. We took a taxi to Waikiki Beach Resort, where Sophie's family was staying. From the taxi window, I saw Waikiki Beach shimmering under the sun, waves crashing gently, palm trees swaying. It's beautiful, I whispered. Noah nodded. Total paradise. But we're not just here for the view, right? He winked. At the hotel, we checked into separate rooms to avoid running into Sophie's family. In my room overlooking the ocean, Noah sat on the sofa, opening his suitcase to pull out a small notebook. Here's the plan, he said, his tone more serious. We'll watch them from a distance, find the right moment to show up. I bet they'll be dining at the resort's main restaurant tonight. We'll surprise them there. I nodded, but my heart grew heavy. You sure, Noah? If they get mad? Noah cut me off. They'll be shocked, not mad. You want the truth about Sophie, right? This is your chance. I looked out to the balcony, where the sunset painted the sea gold. I thought of Eleanor's criticisms, Sophie's dirty shoes, my folding skills, and how Sophie never defended me. I thought of my friendship with Noah, our sign language talks, when he called me his best friend from a past life. Maybe Noah was right. Maybe I needed to see Sophie clearly, no matter how much it hurt. All right, I said, turning to Noah. Let's do this. Noah clapped, laughing loudly. Tonight's gonna be unforgettable. I smiled, my heart racing. The warm golden light from the main restaurant at Waikiki Beach Resort spilled out, illuminating white-clothed tables and lively chatter. Zane Carver stood outside, my heart pounding, gripping my phone tightly. Noah stood beside me, his mischievous smile unwavering, whispering, "Ready, Zane? Tonight's gonna be unforgettable." Just hours ago, we'd arrived in Honolulu, checked into separate rooms, and planned to surprise Sophie's family at this very restaurant. I nodded, but my heart was heavy. Noah's words, "You'll see who Sophie really is," still echoed, making me both crave and fear the truth. We walked in, choosing a table tucked behind a large plant, close enough to observe without being noticed. Noah signaled me to look at the main table, where Sophie's family sat. I held my breath, spotting Sophie instantly. She wore a striking red dress, her hair.
Yeah.
No, what froze me was the man beside her, a tall stranger, holding her hand under the table. "Who's that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Noah shrugged, his eyes sharp. "Just listen, Zane. The truth will come out." I leaned forward, straining to hear over the music and chatter. Eleanor's voice, Sophie's mother, cut through first, sharp as a blade. "It's a shame we had to leave Zane behind. But he was never good enough for Soph," she said, sipping her wine. "If Soph had chosen Mark from the start, we wouldn't be embarrassed." I froze, staring at the man. Mark Reynolds, as Eleanor just called him. Sophie laughed, her voice light but cold. "You're right, Mom. Zane's a loser. I'll divorce him soon and start over with Mark. He's the one I need." Each word stabbed my chest. I gripped my phone, my hand shaking so much I nearly dropped it. Noah placed a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Record it, Zane. This is evidence." I nodded, opening the recording app, fighting back tears. Eleanor continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "He doesn't even know how to fold clothes properly. A man like that dares to be Soph's husband. What a disgrace." Mark laughed loudly, chiming in, "Zane's a total dud. What did you lose marrying him, Sophie?" Sophie shrugged. "Nothing. I'll take everything he has in the divorce." I couldn't take it anymore. Blood rushed to my head, a mix of rage and pain. They called me a loser, a dud. I'd given up my rock star dreams, worked day and night, only to hear this. Noah looked at me, his eyes serious. "Let's go, Zane. It's time." I took a deep breath, stood, and walked toward their table, Noah following. Each step felt like 1,000 pounds, but I knew I couldn't turn back. I stopped at their table, my voice cold, but steady. "Having a good time, everyone." Sophie flinched, nearly spilling her wine. Eleanor's mouth dropped open, and Mark froze. "Zane," Sophie stammered, her face pale. "What a dud. What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Noah stepped forward, his mischievous smile radiant. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Soph," he said, his voice even. "I don't need the wheelchair anymore. Thanks for taking care of me." Eleanor nearly fell out of her chair, shrieking, "Noah, you can walk." Sophie tried to regain composure, stammering, "Zane, you misunderstood. Mark's just a friend." I scoffed, holding up my phone. "A friend?" "I recorded everything, Sophie. Every word you said. Loser. Dud. I heard it all." Eleanor jumped in, her voice trembling. "Zane, you dared to eavesdrop on us. You're shameless." I looked straight at her, no longer afraid. "Shameless? You badmouth me. Plan to take everything I have, and I'm shameless. I'm done, Sophie. I'm divorcing you, and I'll make you and Mark pay." Mark panicked, standing abruptly. "Hey, I'm not involved." But Sophie pulled him back, her face red. "Zane, you wouldn't dare." I stepped closer, my voice low, but sharp. "Watch me, Sophie. Call me a dud. I'll make you pay dearly." Noah clapped, laughing loudly. "That's it, Zane. Show them." Eleanor screamed, pointing at Noah. "You traitor. How dare you deceive us?" Noah shrugged. "Deceive? You never cared about me, so I owe you nothing." The restaurant began to stir, diners turning to look. A staff member approached, polite but firm. "Please, keep it down." Sophie, face flushed, tried to stand, but I was already walking away, Noah behind me. "Zane," she screamed, but I didn't stop. I stepped outside, the cool sea air easing my anger. Noah patted my shoulder, saying softly, "You did great. What now?" I gripped my phone, the evidence still there. "Now I get a divorce," I said, my voice firm, "and they'll pay." I stood on the restaurant's balcony at Waikiki Beach Resort, the cool sea breeze soothing the anger still smoldering in my chest. Just minutes ago, I, Zane Carver, had confronted my wife Sophie Bennett, her mother, Eleanor Bennett, and her lover, Mark Reynolds, at their fancy dining table. I'd heard them call me a loser, a dud, and planned to take my assets after a divorce. The phone in my hand still held the recording, proof of their betrayal. Before I could respond, hurried footsteps echoed. Sophie rushed out from the restaurant, her red dress disheveled, her face pale. Eleanor followed, her eyes panicked, instead of their usual arrogance. "Zane," Sophie shouted, her voice breaking. "Please wait. We didn't mean it." I turned, looking at her, feeling nothing. "Didn't mean it?" I asked, my voice cold. "Calling me a loser, planning to take my money. That's not meaning it." Sophie shook her head, tears streaming. "You misunderstood, Zane. Mark's just a friend. What you heard, it was just a joke." Eleanor jumped in, her voice trembling. "Zane, you can't make a scene like this. You're humiliating our family." I scoffed, holding up my phone. "Humiliating? You trash-talk me, betray me, and I'm humiliating the family? I'm done with you." Mark appeared behind them, trying to speak. "Hey, I'm not involved. I don't want trouble." But Sophie pulled him back, screaming, "Zane, please, don't ruin everything. We can talk." Noah laughed, stepping forward. "Talk? You had 2 years to talk, but you chose to deceive Zane, and me, Mom." He looked at Eleanor, his voice mocking. "Thanks for treating me like a burden. I don't need a wheelchair anymore, and I don't need you." Eleanor froze, pointing at Noah. "You traitor, how dare you?" But Noah just shrugged, his sly smile back. "I learned from you." A restaurant staff member appeared, his voice polite but firm. "Please leave to avoid disturbing other guests." Sophie, face red, tried to scream, "Zane, you'll regret this." But security arrived, gently escorting her, Eleanor and Mark out. Sophie's screams faded, blending with the sound of the waves. I watched them go, feeling relief mixed with pain. The woman I once loved, who promised to take me to Hawaii, was now just a betrayer. Noah pulled me to the beach, where the moonlight lit up the white sand. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer. I nodded, sitting on the sand, watching the waves. I just didn't expect it to be like this. Noah sat beside me, pulling 2 cold beers from his bag. "I suspected Sophie for a while," he said, handing me one. "She changed, Zane. I saw how she looked at you, how she avoided you. I wanted you to find out yourself, so you'd have the strength to break free." I took a sip, the bitter taste sliding down my throat. "When did you know?" I asked. Noah shrugged. "A few months ago. I overheard Sophie on the phone, mentioning Mark. I wasn't sure, but I knew you needed to see the truth." I looked at him, feeling grateful yet amazed. Noah, whom I thought was weak, turned out to be the strongest. We decided to enjoy the rest of the trip. The next few days, Noah and I walked along Waikiki Beach, surfed and laughed under the sun. I felt free, as if the weight of 2 years of marriage had vanished. One evening, sitting by the shore, I pulled out my phone and called Clara Nguyen, a lawyer friend from college in San Francisco. "Clara, I need help," I said, briefly explaining the recording and Sophie's betrayal. Clara laughed over the phone. "Send me the recording, Zane. I'll make sure she and that guy pay. California doesn't mess around with this." I hung up, looking at the sea, the moonlight glinting on the waves. Noah patted my shoulder, his smile bright. "Now live for yourself." I nodded, feeling relief flood me. Sophie and Eleanor could beg, but I was no longer the man they looked down on. After those days in Honolulu, where Noah Bennett and I confronted my wife Sophie Bennett's and her mother Eleanor Bennett's betrayal, I returned with new resolve. The recording on my phone, proof of Sophie calling me a loser, and plotting to take my assets with her lover Mark Reynolds, remained safely in my pocket. Noah, with his mischievous smile, had patted my shoulder before we parted at the Hawaii airport. "You did it, Zane. Now show them who you are." I smiled, nodded, and boarded the plane, ready to end it all. Back at my San Francisco apartment, I opened my laptop and sent the recording to Clara Nguyen, my college friend and lawyer. Clara called back immediately, her voice thrilled. "Zane, this recording is gold," she said, laughing over the phone. "California is a no-fault divorces state, but infidelity and intent to steal assets can get you major compensation. Send any other evidence you have. Texts, emails, anything." I dug through my phone, finding texts from Sophie canceling weekend plans with me for business trips, and a photo of her with Mark Wend. he'd stumbled across on social media. I sent it all to Clara, feeling relief tinged with pain. The woman I once loved was now a distant memory. The next week, I met Clara at her law office in downtown San Francisco, a sleek glass building overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. Clara, with her short hair and sharp eyes, placed the recording on the table. "This is a knockout blow, Zane," she said, tapping her laptop. "Sophie and Mark don't stand a chance. I'll demand compensation from both. Sophie for infidelity, Mark for conspiring to take your assets." I nodded, feeling a weight lift. "Thanks, Clara. I just want this over." She smiled. "Not just over, Zane. You're going to win." The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Clara sent a letter to Sophie, requesting a meeting. Sophie responded with long texts, begging for forgiveness. "Zane, you misunderstood. I still love you." I didn't reply, blocking her number. Eleanor tried calling, leaving angry voicemails. "Zane, you can't do this to Soph. You'll regret it." I deleted them without hesitation. Clara arranged meetings with Sophie's lawyer, but with the recording and evidence, they had no defense. Sophie was forced to agree to split assets, and Mark, after Clara proved he'd been dating Sophie for 6 months, had to pay compensation too. 2 months later, Clara called with news. The divorce was finalized. I sat in my apartment, staring at an email from the bank, confirming a large compensation payment from Sophie and Mark. The money was more than enough to live comfortably, and proved my victory. Clara called, her voice excited. "Congrats, Zane. They paid the price." "What now?" I smiled, glancing at the old guitar in the corner. "I think it's time to live for myself." I started reclaiming my passion for music, which I'd abandoned to be the good man my mom wanted. I joined an amateur band in San Francisco, practicing at a small bar on Mission Street. The first time I held the guitar, feeling the strings vibrate under my fingers, I felt alive again. I wrote a new song about my journey, from being looked down on, Sophie's betrayal, to standing up. The band loved it, and we performed it at the bar to a cheering crowd. Standing on stage, lights in my face, I felt I'd finally found myself again. Meanwhile, I heard Sophie and Eleanor were in trouble. Sophie lost her job due to the infidelity scandal spreading at her company, and Eleanor, according to a mutual acquaintance, had her allowance cut by Harold. I didn't care. They'd chosen their path, and I was no longer someone they could belittle. I kept in touch with Noah, who'd moved out to live on his own in Palo Alto, working part-time at a bookstore. He texted, teasing me, "Heard you're a rocker now. Invite me to your next gig." I laughed, replying, "For sure, best friend." Sitting in my apartment, watching the sunset through the window, I felt at peace. Sophie, Eleanor, and their criticisms were now just the past. I'd won, not just in court, but in my own life. The doorbell rang in my small San Francisco apartment, interrupting the guitar melody I was practicing. I set the guitar down, frowning. It had been months since my divorce, since I'd received a large compensation from Sophie and her lover Mark Reynolds, thanks to the Waikiki Beach Resort recording, and my lawyer Clara Nguyen's help. I thought Sophie and her mother, Eleanor Bennett, were out of my life. But when I opened the door, I froze. Sophie stood there, her hair a mess, clothes disheveled, no trace of her usual elegance. Eleanor stood behind, her face gaunt, her eyes no longer arrogant. "Zane," Sophie said, her voice breaking, almost pleading. "Please, we need to talk." Eleanor jumped in, her voice trembling. "You can't abandon Soph like this, Zane. You have to help us." I crossed my arms, looking at them, feeling nothing. "Help you?" I asked, my voice mocking. "After what you did, calling me a loser, planning to take my money, and now you want my help." Sophie stepped forward, tears streaming. "Zane, I lost my job. The infidelity scandal spread through the company. I have nothing left. Please, help me, for old time's sake." Eleanor nodded, her voice desperate. "Harold cut my allowance. We have nowhere to go. You're the only one who can help." I scoffed, remembering Eleanor's criticisms about Sophie's dirty shoes, my folding, and Sophie calling me a dud in that Hawaii restaurant. "Old time's sake," I said, my voice cold. "You betrayed me, treated me like trash. I owe you nothing. Leave." Sophie tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Zane, please," she screamed, but I slammed the door. I grabbed a handful of salt from the kitchen, opened the door, and sprinkled it at the threshold, a symbolic act to ward off bad energy. I'd learned from a friend. "Don't come back," I said, then shut the door again. Sophie's sobs and their footsteps faded, blending with the street noise on Mission. I sat on the couch, texting Noah Bennett, my best friend who'd stood with me against Sophie's family in Hawaii. Noah now lived on his own in Palo Alto, working part-time at a bookstore. Sophie and Eleanor just came begging. I texted. I sprinkled salt at the door. Noah replied instantly with a laughing emoji. Haha, nice. Next time add garlic for good measure. I laughed, texting back. For sure. How you doing? Ready for Maui? Noah replied, Yup, no more faking paralysis, right? I smiled, grateful for Noah in my life. I stood, picking up the guitar, strumming a few chords. After the divorce, I'd rediscovered my passion for music, joining an amateur band in San Francisco. We performed at small bars on Mission Street, and my song, about betrayal, standing up, and freedom, was a crowd favorite. Every time I stood on stage, lights in my face, I felt truly alive. I was no longer the Zane of 2 years ago, who gave up his dreams to please his mom or Sophie. I was Zane Carver, who'd won, not just in court, but in his own life. One evening, I performed at a packed bar, the stage lights reminding me of my teenage days in San Francisco. I played my song, my voice strong. They called me a loser, but I stood up. The crowd cheered, shouting, and I smiled, my heart racing. After the show, I sat with the band, drinking beer, laughing. I looked out the window, seeing the city lights twinkle, knowing I'd found myself again. I texted Noah. Gig was a hit. You gotta come to the next one. He replied, Deal, Rocker Zane. I'm proud of you. I smiled, pocketing my phone and picking up the guitar. My new life had begun, and this time, no one could drag me down. Zane Carver's story, set in today's United States, reflects real issues in modern society, from family pressures and marital betrayal to the journey of rediscovering oneself. Zane, a software engineer in San Francisco, gave up his music dreams due to his mother's insistence on a real job, reflecting American culture, where success is often measured by financial stability over personal passion. His marriage to Sophie Bennett, who grew distant and cheated with Mark Reynolds, highlights cracks in relationships due to lack of communication and respect, a common issue in modern American society, where fast-paced lives in cities like Silicon Valley can blur the lines between work and personal life. Eleanor Bennett's constant criticism of Zane over minor details, like Sophie's dirty shoes or folding clothes, shows the pressure from in-laws, a reality many Americans face when integrating into a partner's family. Zane's journey to Honolulu, uncovering the betrayal, and ultimately divorcing with lawyer Clarence Doan's help, underscores the importance of the U.S. legal system, where states like California allow compensation claims in cases of infidelity, causing asset harm. Zane's act of sprinkling salt at the door to ward off bad energy and returning to music in Mission Street Bar reflects the American individualism, where pursuing personal happiness is valued. Trust your instincts and stand up for your worth when faced with disrespect, as Zane did with Sophie and Eleanor. In American culture, where individual rights are valued, don't hesitate to seek legal or friendly support to overcome challenges. Most importantly, be brave in pursuing your passions, like Zane returning to music, because true happiness comes from living authentically, not pleasing others. Subscribe to the channel to follow the journeys of people like Zane Carver rediscovering themselves, and don't miss the next inspiring stories. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with more surprising moments from San Francisco to Honolulu.